Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, Sthita Prajna, the perfect human being, is one who through knowledge, elevation, practice has reached the fourth state of consciousness, the state of enlightenment. And the rest, all of us, are still stuck in these conditioned states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, the three conditioned states. And instead of putting in our heart and soul to get back to the fourth state, we do the exact opposite. This is the problem which he's trying to explain here from 60 to 68. The previous verses he gave what is the description of an enlightened soul. As you gain knowledge of the higher, your lower selfish egocentric desires dissolve. This is how you grow. The last one goes, you get enlightenment. But how do we function? It's nothing to do with the text. You should analyze what's happening within you. So yesterday we were doing, right, in the Vedanta class, what separates you from the self is nothing but this mass of desires, this ego, and to cater to that ego, there are desires. So we call it egocentric desires. And how are these desires created? This is what he talked about earlier, is through indiscriminate thought flow. Please understand that the desires that you have today is because you have been thinking along those lines in the past. So your mind has created that groove. And you have to pay a heavy price because the desires is what causes all the mental agitation and sorrow in this world. So the only thing which can help you is your thinking, the intellect, to analyze every thought which comes up. This is the fundamental basis of any philosophical spiritual thinking, is to use your intellect to build it bit by bit. But it's just emotion. And you go by that. That's what he says in 62, 63, which we did in detail last time. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. Dhyaya, it just starts with that one thought. So you saw what's happening in the news, right? This boy shot that person, and he's from a very wealthy family, top education, top opportunities. Now, how does it all start? It's probably going to be behind bars rest of his life. Just from that one thought, that anger. World is full of inequity and injustice. There's a way to tackle it. You have to work towards it. Can't just go by emotion. So a man musing on objects, he says, 62, I'm repeating. I'm giving you an example so you can relate it. Develops attachment. That thought keeps going. Now what can I do? How do I get back? And from that attachment arises desire. I will do something. I want to do. Anger. That's what he says. From desire arises anger. When your desire is interrupted, it could be a genuine desire that there should be justice in this world, there should be equity, genuine. But world is not like that. So you'll be angry all the time if you don't have an intellect. And that's what, so you equate it. From anger arises delusion. So anger represents any emotion. Any emotion goes out of control, you get deluded. And when you get deluded, confusion of memory, you lose your understanding of your place and purpose in this world. And once you have lost that, means the thinking, intellect has gone completely. Thinking has stopped, it becomes zero. Then you're gone. That's what he says. So I told you last week also, Shakespeare's tragedies all talk about this. How it starts with one thought. So in Othello, that Iago, the villain, it just starts with one thought. Othello, he tells Othello, ha, I like not that. See, you should be careful who are the fellows you're around. That's why company is so important. They will encourage the negative tendencies and destroy your positive. You're around people. So Iago is a villain. This fellow has no intellect, Othello. God's good man, I like not that. What do you not like? No, how your wife is talking to that fellow. Very simply some innocuous conversation. Just plants that thought in. And then it grows and grows and grows. Becomes that monstrous obsession, anger, and he kills his own wife. Not just a wife, the most virtuous woman ever painted by Shakespeare. If you all know, anybody of you know Shakespeare, all his plays, the epitome of female perfection is Desdemona, Othello's wife. Those days, we're talking 500 years ago in Italy, she didn't care if he was a Moor. Moor means a black person. What was it those days? You think racism is bad now? She just looked past everything. Look, this fellow has a good character. Married him. Her father was furious, means you can't. And was faithful and dutiful and whatever. Giving everything she had. All the qualities. But you're married to an idiot, what do you do? One fatal mistake. Kills her. Dying also, she says, commend me. Who did this? Her maid says, who did this to you, my lady? I myself. So like that she talks. Commend me unto my kind Lord. He just killed her. So you must trace back. Like Cooper says, folly the spring of the pursuit, and disappointment all the fruit. So the spring of your pursuit is folly. It's that thought which you don't think about. And where it leads you, disappointment all the fruit. So one couple I heard of, their child, they brought up with such loving thing, is now converting to another religion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. They can't handle it. They are in serious. Now, where does it start? You want a child. I'm not saying you should not have a child. You want to control all their life, what they do or whatever. Let them do. No, they won't. So whole thing is just sorrow and sorrow. What will happen? What will happen? What will happen? What has happened? So what the lesson is here, you have to be extremely careful with every thought your mind entertains. And your mind has no direction or dimension. It just goes on generating thought after thought steadily. So the only thing which protects you is the intellect. This is the mind, how strong it is. I believe Hitler had an unpleasant experience when he was a young or something. From that developed a hatred. And that hatred, you know what happened? Destroyed the whole world literally. Second World War, murder and mayhem. One person's mind. You must understand what is all that boiled down to. One mind. And how did that mind develop that force? One thought. Right? So imagine if you had the intellect to just analyze, should I go along with this thought or not? To be or not to be? And you can dismiss it. Where you'll be? You'll be right on top. That is spiritual evolution. That is growth. And that's what he talks about, that self-control. Self-control is not denial. 64. It is that ability of the intellect to drive your action, not just go by your emotion. And after the action is over, you must also not linger in the past indulgence. I told you that in detail. All the time we are lingering in the past. Photographs after photographs reminding you of your past. For what? That's gone. It's dead. What are you doing now? It should be. So you're preventing yourself from putting in effort in the present and creating desires for past experiences. You have no idea what you're doing to yourself. No idea at all. So the human being is now just replete with uncontrolled emotions, destroying the world and yourself. I'm not being pessimistic. It sounds very depressing, but this is the truth. Now what can you do? The good part is you have the capacity within you to get yourself out of it by application of your intellect. So build it. Even fellows studying philosophy is just an intellectual entertainment. There's no effort to build themselves, to be able to govern your emotions and elevate yourself as a human being. You get it? So we have to finish that part. 64 is with the intellect you control the mind. And 65 talks about with that controlled mind you become peaceful. And when you're peaceful, the intellect becomes more available to you. You can develop it more. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle of peace and intellect when you really start growing. So it's just temporarily you feel you're stuck. Once you put in that initial effort, the spiritual path itself makes you grow spiritually. Literally, it's like that. Whereas in the world, you just descend into thoughts and emotions, attachments and fears, ending in the inevitable decay, disease, and death. This is the life of every human being. So when will you wake up? I don't know, really. We can teach you the philosophy, but we can't teach you that sense of urgency. Nobody can. You have to build it on, you have to think, and it should come from within. What am I doing? How many years have I spent of my life doing what? How is it so different than what the animals are? That sense of urgency doesn't come on holidays. Now holidays have come. We are all Christmas, New Year. And then the next holiday will come. Then you're going to India. Wedding, how can I not go? If a guest come, how can I say anything? How can I? Every whole life goes in, how can I not do this? How can I not do that? Life is gone. Shove the whole lot aside. I'm not saying be a recluse, but priority should be straightforward. Don't must put in the effort to grow. That's all you need in this world. Once you're committed, you're on your way. So these verses are, each one is a masterpiece. I can't even, that's why this section, Sthita Prajna, is considered one of the most elevating. It inspires you what is perfection and tells you carefully what to do. And what happens if you don't? So remember, all of you, any problem you're having in this world or stress and all, you got to go back. Where does it start? It was that one thought. It's just that one thought. Yes, Vikram?
Gautamji, there is a comment that I'm presenting as a question here from someone.
Yeah, comments don't present, questions you can present. Now you're confusing it further. Comment you're presenting as a question. Okay, go for it.
It is extremely hard not to even look at pictures of your loved ones that are no longer with you. In fact, looking at them feels comforting. What should one do?
I'm not saying you should not look at their pictures. I'm saying you don't linger in the past. It gives you comfort in the present temporarily, but again you will find that need. What are you going to do with the rest of your life is what you should be concerned about. See, I'm not being heartless. You know how many people have come to me? Not how many, where I don't do counseling first of all. Otherwise, I won't be able to talk to you fellows. There's no end to this. Unless somebody is very close and but once in a while, so they lose somebody, and I tell them two things. Number one, are you working? I'd ask them. No, I have taken a break after this. This is the first mistake. Just dive into your work. You understand? Put your mind into your work, something productive. Stop working. What will the mind do? It will keep going back. And pictures after pictures, albums and reminders, they'll go on looking. How will you ever move on in life? Okay, that was an experience. Unfortunately, it's gone. Everything is temporary. What does the Gita say? What is this world? Gata soon, agata soon. Gata soon means whose breath has gone. Agata soon, whose breath has not yet gone. Now you'll say, what kind of a pessimist fellow is this? If I say I'm alive, he'll say, no, you're not yet dead. But this is the reality, no, what can you say? So it's a phase of life which went. You should be concerned about, okay, you enjoyed it, what are you going to do now? Rather than living in the past. So what happens is, now you must understand, you're saying comforting, it's very temporary, but you are preventing yourself from doing the work you need to do now. and you're creating more and more desires to go back to that experience. So you'll be stuck in that loop. Now what? Now if you don't understand, what can I do? Oh, he's being heartless. Okay, I'm heartless. Now what? You can have your opinion. But these two pieces of advice, so I tell them, coming back to the advice, that I'm not saying throw away the albums and all, keep them aside. So every minute you're not reminded. And they find it difficult to follow, but after 2-3 months, invariably I'll get a call. You saved my life, you've done this, it has helped me so much, I'm almost back to normal. 6-7 months later, I heard they got married also. Literally. Which I'm not against. I said, good, okay, you need at least move on, So, what do you want to spend your life doing? So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying discard it, but don't make it that you're reminded every second moment. So you're not moving in your life. So analyze it. It is a very practical way to live. So a spiritual person ends perception with perception. Remember that. See, it's like saying, I told you last week, right? You eat a nice meal. Last night you had a great dinner at some restaurant and it was really good. Now what do you want to do? That taste is over, no? Oh, it's comforting to think about that. Because when I look at what my wife has made today, it's more comforting to look at that. I'm saying make a good meal yourself today, man. You start cooking. Now, what are you doing today? Why are you going thinking it's over? And you're creating more and more vasanas, desires, to go back to that same experience. So every moment you're doing that. Either anxiety for the future or worry about the past, which is dead. Nobody lives in the present because that's where you put in effort. It's like saying it was so comforting. I thought of the time when I came first in my exams in my 10th grade. What's wrong with that to go over my report card? It's literally like going over your report card in 10th grade where you came first. It's comforting. What are you doing now in your job? Is that going to help you? Develop your skills now so you can have a proper career. It's comforting to look at my report card. You see how absurd it sounds. So move on. Yes, Parag. Unmute him. Yeah, you're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Hari Om Gautamji. Last time we saw the ladder where your desire causes obsession and ultimately leads to destruction. So if your desire and your obsession is towards a good purpose, aligned with your values, does that still lead to destruction?
No. See, when you say aligned with your values, it automatically means you're using your intellect. So, as long as two conditions are met, you're using your intellect and there are higher values. Values means something beyond your selfish interest. As long as these two conditions are met, that is a positive way to live. That will not destroy you.
Okay. Thank you.
But the problem is if it is selfish and it is led purely by an obsession of your mind, that desire multiplies and becomes a devastating obsession which completely destroys you. That's the difference. So Vedanta is not saying you should not function or work. Krishna is not telling Arjuna not to do his duty as a warrior. He's teaching him. You should work, but for the purpose of the country. That's your duty as a soldier. Not to get back your personal kingdom and sit and enjoy it. So that's why it's so positive. You must work, but for a selfless ideal. If it is selfish and mind-ridden, you're gone. That's what he's saying. Starts with a thought, becomes an obsession, destroys you. So this boy, you're angry at somebody who you perceive as unjust, you go and shoot them and destroy your whole life, rather than working towards changing the system and doing something productive. So there's no intellect use, it's just emotion, hatred. You're gone. Right? Yes, Sanjay.
Hariom Gautamji. Gautamji, in the ladder of the fall, he talks about thought leads to attachment, attachment leads to desire. What is the difference between attachment and desire? And why does attachment come before desire in his explanation, in his ladder?
See, the word attachment is used in different contexts. You got to understand that clearly. How we normally use it is you have a desire for what you don't have, right? I have a desire for a wife. I'm unmarried. So you have a desire for something you don't have, for a partner, let's say. Once you get the partner, what happens to that desire? Desire is fulfilled, but it doesn't remain there. What happens? You become attached to that object which has fulfilled your desire. So from that attachment arises a constant fear. A, the object should continue catering to you. B, what will happen if the object doesn't cater to you? This is the price. You can't escape it. So you desire what you don't possess, you get attached to what you do possess, and then constantly fear losing it. You understand? This is how we normally use it. Here it's used in a specific context. He's saying it starts with one thought, and then a thin stream of thoughts go connecting you to the object which he calls attachment. So it's used slightly differently. Both things can be called attachment. Sangha, he calls it here. Sangha means it's a bridge between you and that object. But it's not yet become a desire that I want it. It's just an attachment. It's just a few thoughts. It will be nice to have it. You don't get it also at that time, it's okay. Like I gave the example, you saw in your college some girl and you felt attracted. It's just a attachment. So whenever you're next in the class, you look, where is she? But it's not become a desire, you sit and start proposing. You understand? Then that comes later. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's still an attachment. You still feel uncomfortable when that person is not around. So you have to understand the context. You're right. It is confusing because it's used in different contexts. Normally we use it as something which you already have and you get mentally bound to it. You get imprisoned by it. That is attachment. The person attached to wealth is bound. He can never enjoy his wealth because to enjoy wealth you have to give it up. You have to spend it. They can't spend. So they are tormented in spite of having so much wealth because of attachment. They just can't give it. You got it?
Thank you.
Yeah. Shreyas?
Yes, I just wanted to ask a question, continue on that ladder piece, Gautamji, Hariom Gautamji. About dealing with tragedies and disappointments. Losing a parent, losing a child, losing a partner, losing a job, or watching, something not work out at work, or seeing your kids, something's not going well for them. There is an attachment there. But isn't there an aspect of acceptance? I mean, when we talk about the true, right way of living and loving, you want to feel the pain of that person. And I'm struggling right now when I think about the ladder, because even a tragedy or a disappointment, you have a thought. It's an attachment. It can lead to a desire. And then it can lead to anger, confusion, loss of intellect, so on and so forth.
Right.
And I'm struggling right now just trying to differentiate between the two, because you have to accept when something goes wrong. You have to accept the reality of it, but you don't want to go to pieces. There is an aspect of desire.
See, this is what the confusion is. You want to be attached also, but you don't want to suffer also. You can't have the cake in your one hand and eat it too. That's all. What happens in attachment is you become one with that object. So what happens to that object will happen to you. That's it. So you're bound. That's the price you pay for attachment. Finished. So Vedanta is not saying you should not have objects or beings or things or situations. But if you have an intellect, you will not get attached to it. So you will not go through the suffering. You will be very happy to serve. The problem with attachment is when you say you're in pain not because of that object has gone. You're in pain because that object has stopped catering to you. It's purely selfish. When you grieve, we should grieve for somebody. What are you grieving for? Are you really concerned about that person? You are only grieving what you got from that person is no longer being given. That is what you are grieving for. If you actually understood how birth and death works, you will not grieve. You will understand. They need that experience. They need to move on to the next stage. That's best for them. That is why death happens. No, my parents should not die. Everybody else's parents can die. Because what will happen to my emotional supply? So,
Thank you.
Basics. Some of you have come new. When the love is polluted by selfishness, it's called attachment. So don't tell me we have to be attached. You have to be attached. Don't put me in your category. We all of us have to feel. All of us, putting everybody in this category. No, you're right, because everybody is in that state. But it's not a rule. So if you can love the object without the selfishness, so if you can remove the selfishness from your attachment, that's true love. So you love the object regardless of what they do for you. That is true love. So there's a lot to learn, Shreyas. You just started. Just understand one thing at a time and move on. So what you must understand is it is your expectation, your demand which creates the sorrow, not the loss of the object. Period. You can go on debating all day. This is the law. Vivek.
Good morning, Gautamji. I just wanted to continue a question in the continuance of the topic of attachment. How do we know how to detach ourselves? With all the discussion we are having now.
Before you continue, I just answered that with the previous question. Attachment is when it is dependent on what the object does for you. Detachment is you care for the object regardless of what they do for you. This is true love. True love is nothing but detachment. First of all of you should understand that. The word detachment sends a shiver down your spines because you believe it is physical separation. You stop feeling. Nothing like that. True detachment is you feel for the object. You feel one with the object. It's true love actually. Love is detachment.
So you're saying everything is in the mind?
Of course, everything is in the. Now, why are you bringing that in? It is your mind's demand that creates the attachment. What does it have to do with the object? Even the solution is in your mind. So when the intellect directs it, so how can I serve my partner? The partner has done so much for me. Or how can I be of service in return rather than expecting more? That is detachment. It's a beautiful life, harmony. You don't want anything, you're willing to serve. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Got it in one shot. Very good. You got it. Gotcha. Is it? Yeah. Excellent. People have spent their whole lives and they've not got anything. So I'm very encouraged. Must be good teacher only. What to do? Vikram, who's asking what now?
This is a question from Francia. Can you be attached to things you don't have? Is that an aversion?
See, you like I said, when you can use desire and attachment interchangeably. So yes, you can be attached to the concept of having something. You don't have a family, but you're very, very attached to the concept of having a partner and children. That is an attachment, it's a desire. Same thing. We are just demarcating the two in terms of, we call it a desire when you don't have it, we call it an attachment when you already possess it. So it's just a terminology, it's all the same. It is just thought flow connecting you to the object. Please understand, that is called attachment. Now, all of you should understand, if I take a rope and tie it around this chair and then tie that rope around me, when I walk, what do I have to carry? I have to carry my weight and the weight of the chair, because I have tied the chair to me. Correct? Now somebody said it's all in the mind. This is what you're doing mentally. When your mind gets fixated on an object, it becomes one with it. It's at the thought level. So you feel whatever happens to an object happens to you. Before marriage, did you care what your wife's mood was? Now why do you care? Because she's married to you. So she, a foul mood in the morning, you're in a foul mood. It's like that. You become one with that object. So the trick is how you can be around the object and enjoy the company of the object without that attachment, without that bondage, without that heaviness. That's what you should aspire for. So your focus shifts to service rather than expectation. Then you're free. The more Vedanta you gain, the more self-sufficient you become. That's what we learned from Sita Prajna, right? What is a Sita Prajna? Who's satisfied in the self by the self. So the more happy you are within, the less you need from the world, less attached you are. So you're willing to give. I don't need anything. How can I help? Genuinely you feel that. Can you believe? Yeah, last question. Let's move on to 65 after this. Chitra?
Hariam Gautamji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
In answering Shreyas's question, you gave the example of parent passing away and acceptance of that it's my parents, that's why we're emotionally attached. What is Vedanta's explanation of premature death and acceptance of that? Let's say
there is no such thing as premature death.
That is a child also?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
A fruit fly completes its entire life cycle in 24 hours. A regular fly in 7 days. What is your idea of premature and mature? Each one has their own idea.
Or a human being.
Forget human being. I'm talking about the life cycle. Just because it's a species doesn't mean there's a fixed life cycle. So, your desires decide your birth. When the desires can no longer be fulfilled in this body and environment, it's pure science, logic, there has to be a change. So ultimately, there is no premature or mature. It is just a cycle of cause and effect. You are born in that particular embodiment and environment was useful for you for that time. Could be 10 years, it could be 100 years. You don't fix that, I don't fix that.
Okay, thank you.
Then you move on. So if you understand that, as far as that person is concerned, they needed to move on. You are in sorrow because your supply from that person has gone. At least understand that first. That's the
Thank you.
cold, hard truth. So you must understand, and it doesn't depend on you or your expectations. Anybody born is susceptible to death at any time. This is the law. Nothing can change that. All of us, so fragile. How many cases we hear? Just healthy people. Have you heard in the last few weeks? How many? I can't tell you. Some handicap, some death, some disease. But clearly understand the cause effect. That will help you deal with it and do what ought to be done. That doesn't mean you don't take precautions and measures. Just do it point by point. Move on. So prepare yourself to a point that even if death comes to you, you understand why it's happening and you're ready. Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha. Person who spiritually says in Bhaja Govindam, even if Yama comes, there's no quarrel. There's no why is it happening or nothing. They understand. That so whatever time has been given, make use of it. That's what I'm saying. Don't linger in the dead past. Who knows how much time is there, right? Do what has to be done. So 64, he talked about the two types of self-control. Number one, the intellect should direct your action, not the mind's likes and dislikes. Two, end perception with perception. Right? And if you do that, he says, prasadam adhigacchati, you become peaceful. All the sorrow in the world is because the mind is out of control. Emotions overpower you. That is sorrow. If they are kept in check by the intellect, your mind is steady, peaceful. And in that peace, what happens is 65. So 64, 65 are actually two sides of the same coin.
Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso yashu buddhi paryavatishthate. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso yashu buddhi paryavatishthate.
In peace, all his sorrows are destroyed. The intellect of the tranquil minded, prasanna cheta, soon paryavatishthate, becomes steady. So when you practice self-control, which we've already explained, your mind becomes peaceful. And when the mind is peaceful, whatever intellect you have becomes even more available to you. See, the problem today is because the mind is so agitated, even the intellect you have, it cannot be applied. Because the emotion overpowers you. Don't you say, oh, I'm disturbed right now, don't talk to me. Let me come back to this thing. But then the wife says, you're always disturbed. When can I talk to you? No, that's a different matter. But point is, all of us have gone through that, right? When you're so agitated, how can you think? When you're emotional. See, typical example. There's a surgeon who's done thousands of surgeries. They do it like his assembly line, So they know it's become mechanical. That same surgeon, you put his wife on the operating table. Can you do the surgery? He'll say, no, I can't do it. There are cases, actual true cases, where they've regretted it because they didn't do it and some complication happened with another surgeon. But they just can't because the mind is agitated, attachment. When there's another patient, they're detached. When you're detached, you're objective. You can do it. There's no problem. So intellect becomes available when the mind is peaceful. And then the action is possible. Correct? That's what he's saying here. So you become peaceful through self-control. And when you're peaceful, the intellect is available. So your actions become sharp, productive. You gain success in your field. Very interesting. So with Vedanta, not only do you get peace, you also get productivity, success, prosperity in life. Because the more peaceful your mind is, the more you can concentrate and focus. This is the formula for peace and success in the world. Nothing but the intellect. And as you're applying your intellect, in fact, your demands and desires reduce. So what you get in terms of material wealth is far more than what you need. It's incredible what happens if you really analyze. So many people I know who are close, they tell me, very interesting, I said, that's what these newspapers should cover. That there are people like that who feel they have more than what they need. They only cover people who are constantly craving for more, no matter what they have. So happiness is an equation. Those of you who don't know it, it's the number of desires that you have fulfilled divided by the number of desires that you entertain. So if your desires that you fulfill are 10, but you have 200 desires, your happiness is low, right? It's not complete. So what happens with Vedanta? With a powerful intellect, you can fulfill more desires, but at the same time, whatever desires you have, they decrease. Can you believe? See, nobody understands this. So you'll find yourself, you used to go to the mall once a week. Now suddenly it's been a month, you've not gone. You won't even know. Because you genuinely feel, I don't need. Now what happens with people is, the more desires they fulfill, from 10 desires they fulfill 20 desires. But from 100 desires, the denominator goes to 1000 by then. You see what's happening in the world. All the billionaires, centi-billionaires, anybody is satisfied? All pushing each other one after the other, extracting more and more from the world. So peace produces intellect, intellect produces prosperity, and in fact more peace. The more you apply your intellect, the more your mind comes under control. So it's a cycle. You got it? This is how profound these verses are. 62, 63, the ladder of fall. 64, 65, the solution. Self-control. Buddhi. This word buddhi, intellect, not intelligence. Not all the so many people are intelligent. There's no intellect. There's no control over the mind. Clear? And 66 he summarizes. Yeah, Vikram.
Gautamji, there is a question from Shishagari regarding the ladder of attachment. Saying Sati Savitri, the ladder of attachment, gets her husband back from Yama. Why did she just let her husband go?
What is the question? Why did she let her husband go?
Why didn't she just let her husband go?
No. Why are you talking about her? You talk about yourself, first of all. What we are talking about, what is the consequence of attachment to the mind? Now, why are you relating it to a story? She got her husband back, or see, the Puranas put this philosophy in the form of different stories to convey different aspects of the personality, which is difficult to understand philosophically. In that, it is determination. You will do what ought to be done till the end. That's a different thing he's saying. Next thing you'll ask is, Sita got kidnapped by Ravana. Why didn't Rama just let her go? In the Ramayana, if he's detached. Right? Now you are equating detachment to indifference. These are examples. In fact, it's the opposite of what you're thinking. In spite of being detached, they do their obligation for the other person's sake till the end. No, you see, you understand what is conveying is taking the opposite. Not your fault. Nobody understands these things. So each aspect of these stories talks about a particular truth. You must understand that particular thing. Don't equate it. Here you're understanding the philosophy behind the stories. Focus on understanding that.
नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम् नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्
Na asti. There is neither knowledge, buddhi, nor bhavana, single pointed focus, meditation for the unsteady, ayukta. And to the person without this single pointed focus, there is no peace. To the peaceless, how can there be happiness? So here he summarizes yukta, the root yuj, to join, to unite, from where yoga comes, from yuj, yukta. These are all the same roots. So what it means is a person who's dedicated to uniting with the self, uses the intellect to grow, ultimately merge with the self, versus ayukta, means unspiritual, a person whose only interest is in the world. So for such people, there is neither buddhi, there is no intellect, there is no analysis of life. How can there be a single pointed pursuit, which he calls bhavana, that feeling, that purpose in life? Meditation is translated as. and you're not a person who's not pursuing the higher, cannot be peaceful, cannot be happy. This is the truth. Remember that. The only way to true happiness is pursuit of the higher. So all what you're claiming, people claim happiness, is a very, very small portion, very temporary. So the mind is all the time so agitated, little bit of peace it gets, it blows it out of proportion. But the default state is sorrow because of too many desires. How can you be happy? So you look at the world. I'm not telling you, why don't you analyze? At the individual level, there is stress, agitation, depression, divorces, all the time, everywhere. At the world level, what do you see? War, corruption, terrorism, greed. Greed is just incredible. That indifference to others. So how can there be happiness in such an environment? It's not possible. Individually and collectively. Root cause of all the problems in the world, friends, is this selfishness. Whether it's you or the world, it's the same thing. You have to rise above it and find the self. That's how you become selfless, you benefit yourself and others, and you get towards enlightenment. So the whole thing boils down to intellect. Intellect. People give good answers like that. Intellect. No intellect. Buddhi. And the whole thing deteriorates when that intellect doesn't catch that one thought. We go back to 62, the ladder of fall. So everything in your life started with just one thought. And you have to use the right kind of thoughts to remove all that wrong thinking from the past. And the right thoughts is this. So congratulate yourself, at least you're interested in pursuing the right thought. How much you're doing it, I don't know. But at least you are interested. So only the right thought can remove wrong thought, nothing else. No grace of God or gurus or books. They can help you, no doubt. But you have to have those thoughts within. Yes, Francia?
Hi, Gautamji. So I as you were mentioning before, how our attachment is based on our selfish desire for what other people should give us. And you actually said, I wrote it down somewhere, but you said that if we don't think about what we can get back from them, but just act in service, we love true love because now we're no longer attached. My question is, what happens when there is when that other person or that object is causing suffering by, let's say, violence or their own selfish actions? You know, how do you manage that in Vedanta? What teaches us to manage that? Is it just a removal of ourselves from that presence, or how do we continue to do that?
See, first of all, that suffering what you're talking about is coming because that person is not catering to you. First you understand that, right?
Yeah.
And that is there in all relationships because no two people are the same. First of all, that should be firmly understood. So you don't like, let's say your partner eats too much. I'm just giving an example. You'll say, oh, I don't like that person. Then you'll go to another person, that fellow drinks too much. Now, where do you draw the line? There'll always be differences. unless that, like you said, it comes to such a point where it is physical violence or a gross exaggeration which is impossible to stay, then of course you have to separate. That condition for a basic relationship is not met. But other than that, people separate for meaningless things. You understand? Just because they're different in nature, no two people are the same. So, if you can disregard the differences and focus on your obligations, any reasonable person will reciprocate. It just may take some time. But when they see that you are genuine, it will be reciprocated. There's no question. The problem is when you demand. That's when the breakdown happens. So focus on that, unless obviously there is it's so gross that it's not possible to remain. Then you separate. What is the problem there? That's also possible. There's no hard and fast rule, yes or no. But you must analyze the reasons very carefully.
Yes, okay.
Right. So we'll continue. If you have any questions, as I told you, there's no Q&A session over the week because of the holiday, but we will meet next weekend as usual for both Saturday and Sunday. So we'll see you then. Hari Om.